many languages do you speak?
Barely one. So the people like him shouldn't encourage you to reveal meaningless facts. And we all know you sit down in your dungeon in your stained underpants working out what piece of information you can give to us that's meaningless.
Stained boxer shorts, not underpants.
Okay. Yeah. So I would really prefer not to have that information shared with me about how many languages a manager speaks, because this is bleeding irrelevant.
Let's talk about, well, it might be to do with the fact that he can communicate well with any nationality that walks into the building. So relevant. You never know.
Possibly.
Depending on who he's taking charge of. He takes charge of final tonight against Manchester City. Who's next for Leicester City? Our chief football correspondent, Alex Crook, brings us up to date.
Well, Leicester's search for a new manager goes on this morning, but talkSPORT understands that man won't be Graham Potter, despite the Leicester owner revisiting the possibility of hiring Potter when Steve Cooper was fired on Sunday. The former Chelsea boss is believed to have the same reservations that stopped him taking the job in the summer. Another name that's been mentioned in some quarters is that of David Moyes. But again, it's my understanding that he isn't part of the thought process at this stage. Carlos Corberán, who's done a good job at West Bromwich Albion, was someone the Leicester hierarchy looked at last time round before settling on Cooper. He has a £4 million release clause in his contract, so that would be a costly hire. Ruud van Nistelrooy had 4 games in charge as interim Manchester United manager. He's really keen to get a Premier League job and would love the opportunity to replace Cooper, so he's one to keep an eye on. What we do know is that Leicester didn't have a number one target in mind when they decided to change manager. I'm told that decision was driven largely by the owner. He had concerns over Cooper's playing style and also his relationship not just with the Leicester fans, but with players inside the dressing room as well. And finally, whoever does take over, I'm told, will be given funds to strengthen the squad in January.
They certainly need to do that. I think they had a bad window in the summer, Leicester City, and I think that was borne out of the fact that, as Simon's already articulated, that they were expecting to get a 6-point deduction this year, but they wriggled their way out of that. But by the time they did get players in, maybe it wasn't the right ones. Maybe it was a little bit too late to work on some of the stuff that Steve Cooper wanted to do in pre-season, but that might all come out in the wash later down the line. We understand that Graham Potter, and Crook was saying it there, doesn't want the job. What is he holding out for?
I don't know whether there's some financial ramifications for the deal that he's done with Chelsea on the way out. I can't imagine that 2 years, because it would be, 18 months since he's gone, 19 months, 20 months since he's been out of Chelsea, with a reputation that's not enhanced, that there is anything commercial in the background. Maybe just the clubs that are coming in for him. I mean, Ajax is in a state at the moment, isn't it? Yeah,
I know, but do you turn down being the Ajax manager?
Well, it depends what you're working with. I mean, if you're working with a bunch of clowns that don't communicate very well with you and the club's in disarray and you don't fancy
There's been a lot of changes above the manager in the boardroom. Yeah.
I mean, if you're a football manager and you're aware, I mean, I'm not suggesting that they should be a protected species, but if you're aware of the fact that the owner spends his time talking to bleeding players, then I'm not sure that's the environment that you want to work in. Okay. Because that's not, I mean, listen, if you're the owner, everyone's your employee, but there is an order and a way to operate. And you can't have the lunatics running the asylum. You can't have players coming around management.
You've got to be stronger as an owner there. You've got to say, excuse me, that's nothing to do with me, go away.
You've got to define very simply the communication lines. You know, the players in my time weren't my friends. They were my employees. The champion of the players was my manager.
There is a slightly different relationship at Leicester City, and the reason for that is the tragedy that befell that football club.
There's only one player that's left from that particular era. Everybody else is pretty much gone.
But the relationship between who was the vice chairman at the time, Top, and the players, I think, got enhanced as a result of that. And he's become close to the dressing room, I think.
Were united through terrible grief and a tragedy. Yeah. For the father, who was the intellectual capital and the money and the drive for this football club, and the feelings were towards him, and of course the tragedy that was witnessed almost live on television, you know, it's something you can't even comprehend. And it would have, you know, and you saw the people like Kasper Schmeichel that spoke out very well and very articulately about but that relationship does evolve, and you cannot have players really having a direct relationship with owners. You can if you want
You've still got to have a clear reporting structure, haven't you?
Well, I think so. You undermine managers.
Jay is a Leicester fan, and he joins us now. Go for it, Jay.
Good morning, boys.
Good morning.
Great show, as normal. Sam, I'd just like to talk to you about the comments that you made to the West Ham fans this morning about that game. I thought they spoke a lot of sense, to be fair. And the comment I'd like to also make is that the guy, that numpty, just rang up for the MGM, saying that Leicester have got no plan B, or they've not even got someone lined up. Who in their right mind would do that? If they go out and get rid of a guy, obviously still Steve Cooper, obviously probably was the best candidate for the job. He applied for the job, and he sold himself to the owners, thinking that, I can do something with this club, pending on, what the outcome was with the charges. So anybody in the right mind who runs a company, and you release a coach, you have to have a plan B.
Not true. Not true. You might have but that's not true, Jay, because you might have an idea. You can't have a guarantee you're going to execute it. In an ideal world, you will have that situation where you've already alighted upon who you want, and they've already agreed to come. But there are lots of exceptions, and specifically in public domain businesses like football that are run in a very different fashion, where the opportunity to do that isn't quite as clear-cut as you might think it is. And this decision seems to be made based upon a variety of things, all culminating in, we need to get the guy out of the building. Better to have him out of the building, clear the decks, and we'll hopefully alight upon our plan B, but we don't have a guarantee that we can execute it. Otherwise, it would be executed now.
What makes you think that? What makes you think that they've definitely got a plan in mind? Where have you heard that? Because if you look at the betting markets, for example, usually a good indicator. If they really were sweet on someone in particular, the odds would be a lot different to what they are now.
Yeah, but Graham Potter, he obviously thought he was better than he was. He'd done a great job at Brighton, great. He didn't do a great job at Chelsea.
Yeah.
And then the arrogance of the guy is he's sitting on the bench. Chelsea are paying him every week, thinking that he's going to be the next England coach. You need to get back into football and start going into club football.
But Jay, again, that's a bit of an assumption on your part, mate. Because if I'm sitting from the outside looking in, the last owner I'd want to work for is an owner that spends his time listening to the players.
And what you're related to, Simon?
I'm relating to the observation that seems to be finding its way through the media, that a big part of the reasons why the dissatisfaction reached the point that it did, besides Cooper's inability to produce an attacking side on the field, was that senior players, and we can work out who they might be, were in the ear of the owner suggesting that this guy didn't have the competency to be running their football club. I don't think they're great conversations that an owner should be having with a player, and then certainly not great indicators for a manager coming in going, so hang on a second, the players go round me and they come to you.
Assuming, Simon, we don't know if there's any.
The same way you're assuming that people are keeping Potter on the sideline, he's being arrogant, and he's going to be the England manager.
And also, to be fair, I've just got information from what I would call a Leicester City insider who tells me that this has been going on for a long time. In fact, one player didn't like their contract once offered to them by the director of football, who was at the time. So he called the chairman for better terms. The chairman cowered and gave it exactly what he's wanted, and that's the culture that has been at the football club. So it's not just hearsay. There is certainly quite a lot of information to back that up. But we shall see what the next development is. 03717223344 if you want to have your say. This is talkSPORT.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.